2.11. It's just not working. At what point do you stop trying to mend a story that isn't working and go back to square one? It's hard to say. Story surgery is required at a number of stages, but it is more easily done early on in the process. That's why it's worth being brutal with your story or outline before you start writing a script. It's a bit like baking a cake. Mary Berry says make sure that you measure the ingredients carefully. If you don't, it's very hard to remove flour from a cake and add an egg when the cake is in the oven. The script equivalent of removing flour from a cake is the through-the-night rewrites, caffeine overdoses, panic, sweat, and weight gain. This, in my experience, can be exhilarating once or twice, but is mostly no fun, especially if you're the sort of person that likes to be home in time to read stories to your kids before bedtime, which, being a writer, you probably are. It's possible to get too hung up on jokes early on, which normally comes about from not trusting yourself to come up with them later on. But if you've got proper characters and they are merrily walking into comic situations for good characterful reasons, making things better and then worse again and then better, it will be funny. Jokes will come, and they'll be the best kind of jokes, which are the kind that are only funny because they are said by those characters in that place at that time. Only you can write those jokes. My latest modus operandi is to plan, plot, tickle and hold off writing the actual script until I can bear it no longer and I just want to get stuck in. Normally when that happens, jokes fly, it runs okay and all is well. If the jokes don't come, you might have a problem. It might be you're tired or you need a break. It may be that it all feels funnier after lunch, unlikely, or tomorrow morning, possible. But jokes still might not come, in which case it might be worth stopping mid-draft and redrafting the story, ideally with someone else in the room. You'll spend ages trying to salvage parts you're sure are funny. Once you fail to do that, ditch those funny bits because clearly they're ruining everything else. It's not original advice, but kill your darlings. Pull back, pull back. Sometimes it still doesn't work. Your story isn't flying, or it's dull, predictable, and preventing the show from being funny. The characters are just in rooms talking to each other. Nothing's happening, or the denouement seems like a huge coincidence, or we just don't care. This often happens when our characters interact with non-regulars too much. In short, the story is broken. In fact, the story was never sound in the first place. Somehow this escaped detection. It was holed below the waterline. Time to bail out. Now what? What you do next depends on how much time you have. If you're some weeks away from shooting and they haven't built an expensive set yet, you're probably fine to start all over again. Is there a deciding factor for ditching a story? There are two. One is the producer-exec producer. They may well be saying out loud what you're thinking, that things aren't quite working, and they may not know why, or they may. The other deciding factor is your gut. On Series 1 of Bluestone 4.2, there was a script that was basically fine. It may even been on a second draft, but when it came to rewriting it, we just found it impossible to improve because we realised we couldn't inject any real jeopardy into the episode. We felt it was as funny as this story was going to get, which was funny-ish. We had successfully hidden the lack of jeopardy with some funny set-piece scenes and jokes, but we were sure it was broken and after a few days we thought it was unfixable, so we threw the episode out and started another. We salvaged a C-plot and some jokes from the episode we threw away and wrote a new one. It took us a year to figure out how to make that episode work, and we did a version of it in Series 2. It's episode 4, where the government minister turns up. What am I doing wrong? Probably nothing. Plotting sitcoms is hard, but if you get it right, writing the actual scripts can be straightforward. But we're not quite at the writing stage yet. Next, we need to look at turning storylines into outlines.